We're live. Welcome everyone to this round 3 New Zealand Schools Debating Championship debate between Wellington Gold on the affirmative and Northland on the negative, debating the motion, assuming it were possible, this house would allow you to trade in years of your life to enhance your skills, traits, or appearance. Without further ado, we would invite the first affirmative speaker to open today's debate.
The last 10 years of someone's life are often demoralizing, pain-ridden, and humiliating. People spend years in chronic agony, not recognizing their family and even needing help to go to the bathroom. We would much rather you get to pursue your passion and happiness while alive, and that's why we stand for this move today. Our path to victory in today's debate is to prove that we make that in this world where you can trade these years of your life, this would make people happier than the status quo, and that is what we're going to prove to you today. So what do we stand for in today's debate? We stand for the mood. We're allowing for making the amount of years you could take off of your life, like a cap on 20 years, so you can't take more than 20 years off your life, and these would be the years off the end of someone's life, like the last years in your old age. Secondly, we'd also stand for a process where people get educated on the gravity of their decision before they go through with it. This would probably look like something like 2 medical professionals signing off on your ability to make this decision before you do it. So that's what we stand for today. We're going to be bringing 3 main arguments with our case to you today. Firstly, why people would be justified in making this decision. Secondly, why this would contribute significantly to people's personal happiness. And thirdly, how we would better society as a whole. Okay, on to my first substantive, why people would be justified in making their decision. So in this point, I'm going to discuss why people would have the right to exercise their bodily autonomy, and secondly, how this decision would be something that we believe that people would, that it would be beneficial for people to make. Okay, we're aware that this is a really significant decision for people to make. It's a really important life choice, but we think that generally people are going to be justified in making it, and we think that people are going to be able to fully understand what they're doing, and that's why we think this is really important. Okay, firstly, we think that people should get to exercise bodily autonomy. So we think that people have the right to decide what they feel is best for them, right? Because no one knows you better than yourself. So we think that that's really important to people, and we think that they should get to decide what their priorities are in life. For example, if their family has a history of Alzheimer's or chronic illness, they're probably more likely to want to make this decision. So if we think that if they decide they want to live the last 10 years of their life, this actually isn't going to be a super major trade-off, right? Because we think that the last 10 years of someone's life are often really painful for people. They can be dependent on people. They can feel humiliated. They can be a shell of the person they used to be. Maybe they don't recognize the people that they love, right? We think that these are really painful years of people's lives, and we think that people would be able to trade off these years of their lives while helping themselves in the present, and that's what we think is really important. On the comparative, they're forced to live through these the final years of their lives and a lot of pain without getting any positive benefit in the present. So that is only negative things that happen to them on that side of the house. So we believe that people have a principled right to choose how they live, and that's why we believe that this comes under bodily autonomy. Okay, secondly, this isn't some really major choice. We believe that this choice already exists, but in a different form. People have the ability to improve their appearance, traits, and skills, but pretty much it's only rich people, right? We think that people can already get plastic surgery. We think that people can already get private education. We think that people can already get tutoring. This is the same thing, but the cost is money as opposed to the last painful years of your life. We think that this is the same sort of decision making. Many just can't afford it right now, which we think is generally unfair, because you end up with the already rich people having all these benefits that we want to give to everyone, and this is what the negating team has to defend today. So we think that under the F, everyone has an equal way to choose what they want to do with their life and to have this autonomy. We think that this decision already exists. We think that it's not that new to have to be able to make a decision about your life like this, but we just think we can offer it to everyone. So we think that we have a much fairer world, and we're going to have all of this justified. So at the end of this point, what do we know? We know that this point is pretty rational. This decision is largely already made, right? And we think that this falls under bodily autonomy. So we think that everyone would be justified in this decision as a whole. Okay, on to my second substantive, why this would majorly contribute to someone's individual happiness. So, and this I'm going to discuss the ways in which we increase the happiness for the individual as a whole. So we think that happiness is the most important thing in this debate today. That's what we're going to be proving. And we think that the happiness of the individual is the most important thing. And that is what we are going to prove today. Firstly, this would really alleviate potential societal pressures of like looking the way you want or being the person who you want to be. So currently, there's this massive social pressure to like be smarter, look better, be a like faster runner or like a better singer or whatever. And a lot of people, when they feel like they don't meet these standards, they're really like unhappy. This really impacts their mental health. Some people like even have like this serious issue and stuff. This can even lead to like suicidal feelings, feeling like you're not good enough. Whereas on the negating side, what happens when people feel like this? They just have to live like that for the rest of their life. Like they have no way of alleviating these social pressures. Whereas on our side, they can be happy with themselves while they're alive. Like maybe give off 5 years of their life to like love themselves and accept themselves and be happy with who they are, like, and just totally alleviate all of these societal pressures for like having to look a certain way. So we think that people are going to get to choose to take off all this really negative feeling, and we think that this is going to really help people
on that point,
like with their mental health. I'll accept it.
When dark-skinned women are incentivized to take years off their life to adjust to a Eurocentric beauty standard, how is that them deciding to finally love themselves?
Right, we don't think it's actually that likely that something like that would happen. Already we see that like we don't think that people are just going to start like completely changing their skin color, right? We don't think that's just an alternative at all. That's not really what this debate is about. We think that that already exists, but it like exists in like the form of like plastic surgery and skin bleaching. We don't think that that's what we have to stand for today. And as we've already said, we're going to stand for a process with checks and balances where they have to see 2 medical professionals before they go through with the process. So we don't really think that stands as a problem in this debate today. So we see that people are going to be a lot happier with themselves, and there's not going to be so many mental health pressures. Okay. Secondly, it's going to allow people to pursue their passion. Okay, so we have a lot of passionate, talented people in society who are stuck like working in desk jobs, which again contributes to bad mental health. Like, and maybe they want to like do something, maybe they want to be a writer or something like that, but they're just not good enough. On the neg, their whole life, they have to live unsatisfied and like continue feeling like this because they couldn't like be what they wanted to be. Whereas on our side, they might take 5 years of their life to finally like be a good enough writer, right, and have a career out of it. They can live the life they want and be happier. And that's what we care about in this debate today. Okay, so the third reason that people are going to be happier is it's going to give people more agency over their own life. So currently a lot of people feel like they just like go to school, go to work, and then like retire at 65 and then like die, right? So I think that this contributes to a lot of people feeling really unsatisfied in life and like they don't have a purpose, you know, contributing to this feeling of unhappiness and like inadequacy that we think is a really big problem. On the neg, again, they stay like this forever. They have no option to change themselves. On our side, we think that you're more likely to be able to do what you want to do when you can like go far in your career. Maybe you're like going to be really successful in your field and you get to retire a few years early and like travel the world and stuff. And we think that this is going to allow people a lot more self-control and like to do what they want with their life instead of just doing nothing and like going through that spiral of like bad mental health. Okay, so what do we know at the end of this point? We're going to help people be happier. And that's what we care about today. That's what's important. And we remove the current situation in which people have no agency in making their lives better for themselves. We think that people will have a better life as a whole, and that is what we care about today. Thank you.
As the negating team today, we recognise that by giving people the ability to trade years of their life for characteristics such as being able to look a certain way or being able to get specific traits, that this takes away the sense of accomplishment and the like self-driven progress, and overall takes away from like the happiness of life for people because they're no longer driven to like improve things themselves. Today, we'll be proving that quality of life comes from self-driven progress and being able to see progress and accomplishment. We'll be bringing to you today, today we support positive body images and being able to find inner beauty. We support initiatives and movements that support minorities' mental health and like progress of inequality. We don't support using your life, like life being used as a form of currency, or fast tracking like the ability to get skills without actually learning about hardship and going through struggles and like lacking that character, that like process of character development. We support, on our side of the house, we support learning healthy mechanisms to promote character and image growth and development. So on our side, we'll make it more accessible to like counselors and life coaches and things, because we do recognize that there can be a bit of a problem with like image and things like that. And we think that this would be a better way to target this issue. And we recognize that like it would also massively disproportionately affect your vulnerable youth. So we'll be bringing to you today a principle about why we should prevent the commodification of life, and then 3 points about, firstly, how this is detrimental to the quality of life and self-satisfaction. Secondly, how this heightens inequality. And thirdly, the transient nature of ideal standards. But first, like to start with a bit of rebuttal. Firstly, what we saw brought forward from the affirmative team was this like idea about like how people already have like an inherent inequality. So like rich people can just like buy these changes, and like now this somehow gives people the ability to like become equal with like wealthier people, because now they can just trade years of their life for these qualities that people like wealthier people can just buy. But our response to this is that we think that that is like a massive like we think that like by introducing this move, it actually just like furthers the inequality, because now rich people no longer have to trade years of their life. Like they can just buy it with the currency. Like they don't have that, like they're not it will only be like people who don't have the money to buy these who will be trading their like years of their life and things. So we don't think that this is very good. And we also recognize that like on our side of the house, we believe that in your like last 10 and 20 years, these are really critical years for you to experience milestones, such as being like a grandparent, watching your grandchildren grow old. And that's like something that they don't have on the affirming side of the house, is to allow people to just like trade these 20 years away. Yes.
People who are old and living in pain literally want to kill themselves. That is why euthanasia is a thing. What do you have to say to them?
Well, we think that like we support like euthanasia and things, but like at the same time, we think that this isn't the case for the majority of people. We think majority of elderly and things, while they have these issues, like such as like health conditions, we think they get like a lot of satisfaction and joy out of seeing their legacy grow, seeing like future generations of their family born, which is like an experience that like you can't get at any other age. It's like a really unique experience. And like we think like a big value is family. So on to our principal point about why we should prevent the commodification of human life. Firstly, we think this is extremely important, because if we allow the commodification of human life, we believe that this devalues human life, because it undermines people's sense of autonomy. Because when the value of life becomes equal to like a certain amount of traits or changes, then like people no longer have like the sense of like achievement and things, like because joy and satisfaction on our side of the house, we believe that joy and satisfaction in life come from like completing like something challenging or like besting a challenge. We can see measurable growth. No, when everything can be achieved quickly, it leads to a lack of sense of achievement and lack of success. So onto our first substantive about how this is detrimental to the quality of life and self-satisfaction. What we already see happening right now is people going through months, sometimes years of hardship. But what do we see as a result of that? We see people finding themselves. We see people solidifying their identity by going through these struggles and like understanding how they can respond, to these challenges and learning about their own mental strength. We already see a problem right now with like youth being pressurized to like conform to unrealistic standards. Like we see like Instagram models and like YouTubers. Like imagine if it was just like a quick, easy change, and like these young people in like their 20s like suddenly come like trade years of their life in order to like get meet these like unrealistic standards. And so what we see happens is that, like, firstly, this heightens like the poor people's poor body image of themselves, and we see that like youth are like in a unique harm of the situation. For example, we see like Instagram trends. Like, for example, a few years ago, we saw like thigh gaps were a trend, and it took like years before people began to like actually shun this trend and realize something was wrong and actually embrace their like bodies and things. But we see that a lot of growth has come from this. And that now people like a lot of body positivity images have come from this. We think that's like a very progressive result where people can be happy with themselves without changing it. Secondly, now that you can like change at will, there's like no longer the incentive to, like, of body acceptance, and like it takes a massive toll on their mental health. Why is this? It's because there's like no precedent of an ongoing cycle of never being good enough when you can just change. We can just change to be like something else. Like you just, if you don't feel good enough, you can just easily change. So people never actually learn how to deal with these like negative body issues, which they, once they've like used up those 20 years, what are they going to do? And they still don't know how to deal with these issues. No. And so, like, the outcomes of this is firstly, people will like continue to change and conform to like social norms and like repress diversity within society, and like lead to like a lack of inclusion on things when like, yeah. And we see like, secondly, this leads to like a lack of like character development, and people are no longer actually know how to accept themselves and how to accept positive body image. And so onto our second substantive about how this heightens inequality. What we see happening right now is that people are already stunted in like skills, appearance, and like appearance wise, is that like the wealthy people can like already afford to change their appearance. Like they won't have to trade years, because now like disadvantaged communities are stuck in like this like cycle of just like never being good enough, and like wealthy people like don't have to trade years to get these advantages, and we think that is completely unfair. It also, like, we already see like specific groups within society like already have better qualities of life, and so what we see is going to change is firstly, like what we brought up in a point of information in first, is that now people can change like dominant ethnicities and things like that. The response we heard from the affirming team was that this was like an unrealistic change. But we think when, like, for example, a Black person has to worry about being pulled over by the police or being able to do everyday activities, we think that like there's actually a really big incentive to change your nationality when you're no longer going to be, when you're able to like live what they're going to consider like a normal life. And so we think that like when you take away, when people can just like change their ethnicity like that, and like somehow that's how they fix their problem, then like we lose that like push to progress in society. And so therefore, because we get like better progression and better like quality of life by learning how to like control your mental health, we are strong to negate.
Cool. So I'll just be 1 moment. I thank the speaker for the speech, and I'd like to welcome up the second affirming speaker.
Guys. The comparative in today's debate is that you can either live a natural life or live a life where the individual actually dictates how they live and actively knows what is best for them, and living a life where they have a particular trait that is best and they feel better about themselves. When the negating team tries to tell us that this will only hurt their mental health and their social image, we think that this is utterly wrong, because these people are making an educated decision through doing showing this, and which I will show later in my case. 3 points of rebuttal I'm going to bring to you. First of all, why it is a justified decision. Second of all, we're going to talk about a sense of accomplishment and how we get it on our side. Third of all, we're going to talk about life experiences, including family. And then finally, we're going to talk about inequality and discrimination. So first, let's talk about how this is a justified decision. We clearly told you at first that we think that this is a big decision, so it's not going to be taken lightly by people, and they're going to be well thought out into what they're taking. But secondly, we think that they have guidance to ensure they will make their decision. So when the negating team came out and told us that, like, what's going to happen is people are going to have constant social pressures to change, and this is going to harm their mental health, we think that this already currently exists. But the thing with cosmetic surgery, for example, and all these other aspects, but what we do on our side of the house is we actively alleviate the suffering that these people have and help their mental health in terms of if they really want to fix their nose or their appearance, they can go ahead and do that with the cost of their life, and they are making a decision about this, and that is theirs because that is their bodily autonomy. So why do we think that bodily autonomy is the best in our side? Because we know that people know themselves best. Even our government acknowledges this in current days, particularly with smoking. People generally dislike smoking, but we still allow it because the government knows that to some people, smoking is more, the happiness that comes from smoking is more important to them than the health risks that come with that. And we don't even have this on our side. We have no negative aspects except for the fact that these people are actively making this decision. So let's now talk about the point on how a sense of accomplishment. So they came out and told us that they think that we're creating a world that is got no sense of accomplishment, meaning that people don't have to struggle to get to success. They learn no lessons, and therefore they're not fulfilling a good life. We think that people, first of all, people are always going to want more. We think that if you achieve something, you're going to want something else. But secondly, we still think they have to work. We still think that these people will, once they get their knowledge or change their appearance, they're still going to have to work to get certain achievements. They just have the help of that knowledge or that appearance or trait. But finally, we think that even then, if only a select few make it and everyone else is not good, we're actually happy with this because we understand that commitment is a good trait that we get on our side. The people who really want to better themselves in sports, for example, if they want to be professional at shot put, they are willing to risk to take away their life to be the best at that sport. And what that shows to the public is that you need true commitment to be successful in life. So we do show positive traits on our side. But even then, finally, we still think that people still have hardship on our side of the house. They still learn valuable lessons through life because, for example, you're still going to have to go through real life human experiences, such as people getting a divorce, such as people having kids, which has its own lessons taught to it, and you get inner strength from it. So overall, under that point, with the sense of accomplishment, what we do is we still guarantee it, but we do it in a new way. We think show the trait of commitment, and that is positive on our side. Finally, let's look at the individual's average experiences. So time with the family, for example. The negating team clearly told us that they think that it's more important to spend time with your family than to take to get traits, positive traits, or change your knowledge. But what we clearly told you at first is that this actually has negative effects to it. We think that what happens with your family is that they're going to still have pain when watching you suffering and dying in those later 10 years of your life that you didn't take away. Then we actually think that your kids will actually look at you in a positive way and remember you for being a famous singer because you put into that trait. So we would rather that on our side. Finally, let's quickly talk about discrimination and equality. They told us about how our point on how it's indiscriminate actually doesn't work because only the poor will trade in their life rather than the rich. We think that the rich will still trade in their life, for example, with knowledge, which you can't necessarily buy. Like education can buy you that, but you can't be the smartest person in the world. We've seen that with some kids who have come from public education and turned out to be one of our best scientists in the world. Then secondly, on the point of how a Black woman would change her skin, first of all, we think that people who who are Black, for example, have a strong sense of culture and they're not going to change for that reason. But secondly, we think that even if they do change, what they're going to do is change themselves so they get a trait that gives them confidence to fight for Black people's rights. And that is important because that is something they identify with and grew up, and they're going to stand by that because of their past experiences. So now let's enter my point on how we overall improve society. What I'm going to tell you in this point is how we overall, because when we improve the quality of life, this leads to happiness, which is what we aim to prove to you today on the Affirmative team. 3 reasons for this. First, we think we get an improved quality of life. For example, there are many cases when if you trade in some of your life for knowledge, we can help with the COVID vaccine or finding a solution for climate change, or even then, like we said, with a social trait that could help you promote Black Lives Matter or feminism and get people to actively listen to your campaign. What this means is that one person makes a decision that benefits everyone. So even those people who didn't choose to take their lives, they help them still there. And we also, but on the comparative, what they actually get on their side of the house is that lives are lost due to COVID. Time doesn't actually help them because they don't have the knowledge, they don't have the people to take action, and we get overall better people to help our society to progress and help the average individual have a better quality of life, which makes them happy. But secondly, under this point, we think we get more leisure time for people. For example, people could trade in to be more efficient. So that means that they're more productive at work with their new acquired skills such as knowledge or their new traits, which means that they can finish at a time like 3 p.m. instead of 6. What this means is that they get more family time and they're overall happier with their lives again. So overall, we think that this is the most important to this debate because when an improved society happens, everyone else is happier too, and that is something we support. So overall today, because we have shown to you that this cost for some individuals is the best for their lives and makes them happier, it is worth it for them. These are the people we are fighting for. Proud to propose. Thank you.
Good to go, Peter? Or?
Yep, if you're good to go.
Sorry, Sorry, I just read your message, but yeah.
We thank the speaker for a speech and would now invite the second negative speaker to continue their team's case.
When the affirming team came up here and told us that skin lightening is very unlikely to happen, we think this assertion showed how deeply ignorant they are of the social pressures acting on millions of people in South Asia and Africa around the world today. Because there are millions of women and men who buy into a billion-dollar industry for literally using scammy products to try and attempt to lighten their skin to meet classist standards and colonially imposed standards. This is what they are enabling to happen even further on their side of the house, while also exacerbating the massive inequality between the rich and poor, and also driving a massive loss of quality of life. 3 main points of clash for you today. Firstly, on this principle justification, then a split point on who best fixes inequality, followed by a third point of clash on quality of life, and then a point on the transient nature of what actually is an ideal standard. So just quickly on this principle justification, they told us that there's a right to exercise bodily autonomy, that people have a right to decide what they do, right? But we see that the government does intervene in people's freedom of choice when there are acute harms to their actions or it deeply damages their lives. This is why there are literally dozens of drugs that are illegal, not just cigarettes, but there are dozens of drugs that are illegal because they do irreversibly and deeply impact somebody's health.
That point,
when people can literally erase 20 years of their lifespan for materialistic gain, which they brought forward by saying people will pursue successful careers first and foremost, we think this is a massive devaluation of human life. It's a commodification of the human lifespan, and we think there is an absolute moral obligation to intervene. Second point of clash, inequality. They told us that their side of the house is literally just the same as the status quo, but in the status quo, only rich people can attain benefits. Why does the opposition dramatically worsen the absolute worst excesses of class privilege and inequality? They told us that people should be successful in their career on their side of the house. This is a concession that the main purpose of this is either fixing appearance or it's a materialistic self-gain. This means that they gave the example of, for example, disadvantaged people trading decades of their life to get enough skills to become wealthy. Not only is this not guaranteed due to the random and non-meritocratic nature of the job market, but we also see that the rich are already allocated high positions and big inheritances without taking a second off their lives. Yes, this is vastly unfair. They also said that rich people can't buy knowledge, so will still buy into the scheme. But the fact is, rich people don't need to, right? Because the Watson or Trump family are not geniuses, but they are billionaires. They are not incredibly intelligent or have very advanced degrees, but they literally inherit their positions of power and influence in society today. When they also told us that skin lightening is very unlikely to happen, we think this is just grossly ignorant, because on their side of the house, these people who face deep discrimination and social pressures are even more encouraged to conform to Eurocentric beauty standards, which I will further address in my split point. They also told us that people have opportunities to escape poverty and things like that. But if there's one person thinking that they're going to take years off their life to escape poverty, then millions are, because people in poverty are going to be forced to compete for limited opportunities. They're going to be competing and causing an increased amount of years traded off their lives. The poor will literally sacrifice their lives to gain some seats at the table of the wealthy. We think inequality is merely heightened on their side of the house. People that already have traits, that already have these desirable traits or appearances are going to live longer because they don't have to trade in any of their life. And they're going to accumulate more over their expanded lifetimes and pass this wealth through generations, further entrenching the class system. Onto this third point of clash, the quality of life. They told us that people can just upgrade skills to live the life they want, right? We think this is a utopian world that is completely unrealistic, even if this fantastical move were to be implemented, and it undoes their entire case. Why? It is massively contradictory. So either there's a tiny minority of people that sacrifice their lives and are able to become an exceptional elite of famous singers, as their example was, or if the majority of people do change to become part of this like exceptional group, it's impossible for them all to become famous, right? It's just statistically impossible if everyone is updating all their skills to all become famous, right? Because by nature, fame only applies to a minority of the population. So there is a completely unridiculous case. No, not everyone can suddenly become famous singers and super rich authors and stuff that don't have to do any boring office jobs. Completely unrealistic. We also see that humans constantly want new things in life, right? They're rarely satisfied with everything they already have. And they pretty much ignored our content at first, that people actually require these life experiences to gain value for themselves, right? They require these life experiences to actually understand how to accept themselves, to learn mechanisms to cope when things do go wrong, like their divorce example.
On that point,
and they, on their side of their house, use up their 20-year limit and are still unhappy with themselves, they'll have to do what they already do on our side of the house, except now they have more time to actually enjoy their lives once they get through it. We see that when people are young, they're especially impressionable and susceptible to social pressure, predatory marketing, and popular trends. They will not be satisfied with these rash changes they make later in life, in their chronic years of agony, as they're saying on their side of the house. We brought you at first that this is actually a very important part of your life, right? Because it's the first time in your life when you don't actually have to work such long hours. You can spend your time with loved ones. You can reflect on your life and actually have some free time to enjoy yourself. And the fact that the majority of people in countries where euthanasia is legalized don't pursue euthanasia completely destroys their point that this is like a living hell for every single person over 50 or whatever ridiculous thing they're trying to bring to us. And quickly, we also think that the fact that people can simply update their skills and talents means these things will be devalued, right? Because hard work required to overcome these challenges is a race. What does this mean? Not only is there less satisfaction for these careers and jobs because people will literally see it as just using up your life, it also means that like the average base of society like will move upward. And what does that, in that way, people will still be relegated to the bottom classes of society, still relegated to poverty, because not everybody can, fill it in these minority groups of fame and wealth that they're trying to say will apply universally to the entire population, which is incredibly unrealistic. Moving quickly onto this split point on the transient nature of ideal standards. We've seen that beauty standards change rapidly and often in drastically different directions. Body shapes go in and out of fashion. Characteristics like tan skin or freckles or big lips that become trendy now often previously looked down upon or seen as undesirable. Similarly, there are skills and talents that become more or less relevant in the job market. Everything is constantly changing. Why is this so terrible on their side of the house? Two main mechanisms. Firstly, when standards evolve, people are pressured to trade off years of their life to keep up with the trends. People who previously were regarded ideal will suddenly perceive themselves as having become less desirable and feel deeply inadequate, pushing them to trade off years. But many people, especially those who were most vulnerable to begin with and were already susceptible to seeking to imitate beauty standards, will trade multiple times. They'll trade multiple different sections of their life in to maintain their appearance as trendy, to keep up with all these rapidly evolving beauty standards and to fit into the conformity of society. Secondly, we see that social movements to improve these perceptions of beauty and privilege will be nullified, right? Because the mass movements of Black women who have embraced their natural hairstyles and fought prejudice because of the necessity towards improving the quality of life suddenly have a way out, and people who remain in their normal form to advocate against all this discrimination can simply be shut down by being told to trade off years. Like, if the struggle is so bad, then just go and change your looks. What do we see on their side of the house? We see a collapse of all the social movements that we are winning on our side of the house to improve body positivity, to improve racial equality, all those kinds of things they say the house. We also see a skyrocketing amount of inequality between the rich and poor as human life is commodified, and the poor literally trade off decades of their existence merely to keep up with the class society. Thank you very much.
I thank the speaker for the speech. I'd like to welcome up the third affirmative speaker.
Wherever inequality exists in the world, there is always an attempt by someone, somewhere to fix it. We think that is basic human nature, and we think that's a principle that continues to stand in today's debate. But more than that, we think that is a principle, we think that is a skill that is even greater, that is happens even more when people can acquire new skills, when people can better themselves, when people can fight for justice, for freedom, and for equality in a way that is more effective than ever before. We think that the kinds of injustices that we see under the status quo don't actually exist anymore when people are able to effectively fight against them. We don't think that those mechanisms exist under the negating side of the house. For that reason, we think we can win this debate today. 3 points of clash. First of all, why is this a justified decision? Secondly, why people are going to live better, happier lives, and we think that's the most important thing. And then thirdly, why we on the negating team uniquely are positioned to reduce inequality. So on this first point, why is this a justified decision? Because the negating team keeps trying to tell you that it's really unfair that people won't know what their choices they're making. Two things to deal with here. First of all, on bodily autonomy and on government intervention, right? We think that taking years off of your life in exchange for traits, in exchange for characteristics, isn't just it's not like a drug issue, right? It's not something that harms you every second of every day of your life. We think that the government intervenes in things like taking harmful drugs when when not taking those drugs would cause less harm to you than taking those drugs. Why is the situation different? It's different because in order to decide that you are so unhappy with your life, you want to fundamentally change who you look like, who you are, and how you live, you literally have to be in such a state of unrest, of unwellness mentally, that
it would be more harmful for you to not do this, not for you to not trade off these years of your lives than it would be for you to trade off these years of these lives. We don't think drugs are an analogous situation. We actually think that for the majority of people, having that bodily autonomy and having that ability to actually say, it's better for me to do this than it is for me to live when I am 90, we think that that is fair, that they can make that decision. We think that in addition, right, it's not going to be a materialistic choice. We think the majority of people use this to pursue their passions, to pursue things that they enjoy. And we know that because a lot of the time, like when people win lotto, right, they go on like massive holidays, they have experiences, and they do things that they want to do. We think that actually, even if it is materialistic, in the short term and even in the long term, this is what will make a person happier. At the end of this debate today, that is the most important thing, is the happiness of a person. So even if they use this money for materialistic reasons, which we don't think they will, we think that it's still a valid choice for them and they're still justified in making it. I also just want to deal with what the negating team just said about trends. We think there are 3 reasons why this decision isn't going to be affected by trends. First of all, we think this is a significant choice and people will consider that. People will probably spend like several months, I don't know, maybe even a year deliberating whether this is what they want to do before they make that choice. Why is that? It's probably because they have old people around them, because they have their parents, and they can see that actually life is precious. But like if they are in such an awful place where they want to make this choice, they should have the right to do that and they won't take that lightly. Secondly, then, we think that like the ongoing analogous situation of plastic surgery isn't affected by trends either. We think that like the majority of trends like in this sort of area are things like being smart, are things like having good people skills. We don't think those are things that change over time. We don't think that's going to be affected by trends. And finally, then we think that a lot of the time, like as we can see with things like plastic surgery, like people just don't like change their face like 50 times a year, right, to match the trends that come out every week. We think that actually people are more logical in this. And so people will continue to make rational decisions. We think they are justified. We think that their happiness is most important, and they are the only people who can choose for themselves what makes them happiest. Secondly, then, how are we going to allow people to live better lives? Because as I just said, the most important thing in this debate is people's happiness. Now, what we need to realize is when we make this decision, we are not undermining life. We are giving people the opportunity to choose what they themselves value in their life, to maximize their happiness in order to choose what they want the most. And we think that that only happens when they can make a choice like this. We think that people are super unhappy, and that the notion that they will in this current day under the status quo, there is no way to escape that happiness, right? We think that first of all, social pressure to not be overweight or to have meet certain beauty standards, we don't think that's going away anywhere quickly, and we think that the harm it does to people is significant, that in the meantime we would rather they can just not have that pressure on them than that they fight this massive battle on behalf of hundreds of thousands of people as an individual, and that they face all that sadness. We don't think that we can ask those people to take on that social pressure when we have a better alternative. But secondly, we think that even if that societal pressure went away instantly, we think that people always inherently want more. We think that people are going to keep fighting for what they want. They're going to take this they're going to get this kind of slight advancement in life, and then they're going to keep fighting. They're going to keep working to be smarter. They're going to keep working to be better, because that social pressure is there to motivate them. But rather than just completely rolling over and accepting that they will never be good enough, they now have a leg up and they have a way to fight for it. We think that through that mechanism, they also get a sense of accomplishment, and we think that that is unique to our side of the house. The negating team wanted to tell you that it's really important that people are unhappy, because it means that they can they can have struggles in life and they can grow as people. We think that actually people probably still have struggles in life, right? Things like divorce just suddenly don't happen to you because you're smarter, right? So we think that people can still grow and change in life. We think that they can still live meaningful lives even when that life is just happier and more comfortable for them. Secondly, then, additionally, we think that this is really a question about time versus opportunity. We think that the idea of the ability to spend time with your grandchildren, to see your children grow up and get married, we think that that is only valuable if you can physically know that you're going to be able to appreciate that. We think that if you know you have a history of Alzheimer's, if you have a history of you're not going to be able to enjoy that time of your life, we think that it's perfectly justified for you to make a choice about what's going to make you happier, and we think that that's just generally a good thing. Finally, within this point on the crisis of rising expectations and the fact that people are still going to live good lives, even if everyone decides to do this. Two responses here. First of all, we think that not everyone will actually, we think it's really unrealistic to say that everybody's going to trade in years of their life, because we think that a lot of people actually are content with their life. They're not sufficiently dissatisfied that they're going to trade away time. Some people just generally think that time is more important, and principally people are going to agree with that. So we think that not everyone is going to take on this. But secondly, even if everybody does, we think that the idea is we think that individuals who are really committed to a cause will continue to fight for it. So even if everyone has this leg up, we think that people are going to continue to work, continue to grow, and become better people. We think that we give them that opportunity to do that in a circumstance in which they are comfortable, in which they are happy, and in which they actually like who they are as a person. We are the only side of the house that allows people to improve themselves and to feel better about themselves. We think that is so important in today's debate today. Finally, then, why we are uniquely positioned to reduce inequality. Because as I flagged in my introduction, the majority of people actually really want to fight against inequality, right? The majority of Black people don't say, wow, I don't want to be Black anymore. They say, wow, there's this really massive systemic issue and I want to change it. What we think is actually really likely to happen is that people will take on skills like extra smartness or extra persuasion, and they will use that to actually better the world for people who are in those situations. Under the negating side of the house, we have the situation in which that equality still exists. There is no mechanism to get rid of it. And so we think that we are the only house that is uniquely positioned to reduce that inequality by helping people to do more than they ever could before. At the end of this debate today, we value happiness above anything else, and we value equality. We think that we can get that, and we are the only house who can get that.
To offer you one thing, anti-gravity.
When people get to the end of their life, they don't stop and look back and think, you know what? I wish that I changed my hair, that I conformed to beauty standards. When people reach the end of their life, most of the time they're thinking, I wish I had more time. I wish I had more time with my family to do things that I enjoyed, to find my happiness in myself and be confident in my own body. Now, when you have a 20-year-old, I think it is hard for them to kind of comprehend this idea that when they're old, they're going to want more time. So it's easy for them to make this quick decision here and now to change to conform to beauty standards, to make themselves feel as if they are more welcomed and accepted in community. We as a negating team today see so many issues with this problem that the affirmative team actually think is, fine, and there's no worries at all with it. So today, we believe this debate has brought up two main questions. So the first and the most importantly being, who better achieves quality of life and a sense of happiness and fulfillment? And the second being, who gets more equality and progressiveness in society? So onto that first point of Flash about who better achieves quality of life and sense of happiness and fulfillment. So the affirmative team today have tried to win this point by building two main ideas about how, this idea of bodily autonomy and yourself best, and this idea that, to achieve your dreams faster means to achieve happiness faster, right? So we have 4 responses to this today. So to response to your body best and bodily autonomy, while this is true in some instances, like what you choose to put in your body and things like tattoos and earrings and the way you express yourself and what you decide to do in terms of personal issues, yes, that is true. However, as we told you at second, the government does step in to a point where it is harmful. And we gave you an example of drugs. No, we told you that there are many drugs that the government has banned and said that are bad because they hurt your body. And we think that a lot of people shouldn't be making this decision. So we also, a second response to this point is that even if you do know yourself better, like I said before, it's hard for you to comprehend what you're trying to do. And even if you do know yourself better, you are still influenced by external factors like social media and, societal pressures, and then we think this is very detrimental to people who are going to be conforming to these issues. So this looks like young, impressionable women and men literally taking years off of their life so that they can believe that they are beautiful and fit current beauty standards. I think that is extremely detrimental, because what happens when these women change themselves, or these men change themselves to conform to society and are still not accepted? So now, they still have the problem of not being able to create proper identity because they haven't truly dealt with it. They've just found, a quick solution.
On that point,
you see them still, what happens when beauty standards change and then they feel even worse. We do know that there's going to be a lot of external factors that make someone who they are. And we believe that the Affirmative team today has completely ignored this vulnerable group. They haven't had anything about how they are going to, protect these innocent and vulnerable people in society.
on that point,
very impressionable towards things like social pressure. Yes?
we clearly told you at first that we have medical professionals to advise these people. Do you understand that actually makes them helps them make an educated decision?
My response to that is an example of, say, plastic surgery. I think in plastic surgery, you have a lot of counsel, you have a lot of people counsel you on that opinion and the repercussions of that decision, and yet people still go through with it and are still unhappy on the other side. So it's like, how can having two professionals talk to you about the decision when, decision of literally taking years off of your life? It's hard to substantially think about the actual repercussions in the future of this. So the second response to their point about how this is like a fast track to your dreams means is you reach happiness quicker. So several responses to this is, first, if everyone can now do this, everyone can fast track to their happiness, supposedly, right? So everyone can suddenly become really smart. Everyone can suddenly become really talented. Everyone can make this compromise and be there. So what does this mean? It means that now, professional jobs and professional things aren't actually based on your skill, because everyone now at the same skill level. This opens the door to people, actually deciding who they want to hire and other, more superficial things rather than skills. For example, even like gender or looks, or, you're still creating all these issues. No, right? So even if they the point, even if they do give up all of this time and money to get there where they want to be, what we see now is they've given up their time and it's still not good enough. What happens then? So they became a professional singer, or, even if they do manage to achieve their dreams by fast tracking there, what happens when they reach there? And because they didn't have proper drive, or they didn't have to work for it very hard, or they didn't, truly get it there themselves, it's kind of like a lack of unfulfillment. It doesn't feel right because they didn't put in the work that we got today. So we also, a few more points, are saying how we believe that this motion creates a society and this mentality that you don't have to work hard or have any driven to achieve your goals. And we think this is very detrimental, because it means that people, they don't really understand the consequences or the risks that they're taking, because they can just think of the short-term benefits. We also believe that it teaches people to value materialistic and surface level things, right? So it makes them trade off their life for things like looks, for things like traits or characteristics. And there's so many external pressures that someone gets that the affirming team haven't even begun to comprehend. What if someone's trying to change themselves to make themselves more appealing to a man because they want to be with them, etc. There's so many harms that come out with it. Whereas on our side of the house, we have people who have mentalities and they work hard to get what they want, they have driven, and etc. So on to this second point of clash today, but who gets better equality. So we heard that we affirmative teams say that we get equality because it doesn't matter if you're rich or it doesn't matter what your ethnicity is, you can still get ahead in life, right? However, what we see is that it actually is still going to create a drive. How is this? So first, it still puts pressure and creates a gap. So example, rich people don't need to waste years of their life in order to get tutors and get knowledge and get a good position because they have connections and they have money, comparatively to the person who is poorer and wants that same position is then going to have to give, 10 years of their life to get to the same point? Like, that sacrifice is incomprehensible, and we think it is really detrimental for the affirmative team to say that that is okay for them to give up in order to be on the same playing field as, say, like rich people, etc. They said that you're still going to have worked forwards, a majority of people aren't really going to confine, etc. However, I believe this isn't true because people are constantly feeling pressure to conform to social pressures and to look beautiful and to be great and have all these great choices. And that is why, as the negating team today, because we can recognize how detrimental this motion would be if truly implemented, we are proud to negate. Thank you.
Are you good to go, Zach?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, as is customary, we would reverse the speaking orders and invite the leader of the negative team to close out their team's case.
Today, it seems like we debated two very different teams, because the affirmative team today led with this amazing utopian view of the world where anyone can suddenly become a famous singer and they can have a massively wonderful quality of life and have no issues with their own looks or appearance. But later down the line, they started adjusting themselves, right? Because they said that everyone would have a leg up that would start canceling each other out. They told us that yes, people would still have struggles. They would still have all these desires that would add on top of each other, even after adjusting their appearance or their traits. With this concession, we see that there's a massive contradiction inside their case, right? The fact that they had to readjust all their outcomes from the beginning shows a massive flaw inside their argument. I've identified three main points of clash that have come to light throughout this debate. Firstly, a short principle on the justification of doing this. Secondly, on who best achieves quality of life and happiness. And thirdly, who best improves inequality and who worst exacerbates it on each side of the house. Starting with this principle justification, the main material they brought us here was bodily autonomy, right? This concept that the person who wants to go forward with this pretty much knows best. Third, we provided you with, and second, we provided you with this very valuable insight that these people are young, they're impressionable when they're often planning to make these decisions, as they conceded, because they said these are mostly young people who will probably want to cancel out their agony-ridden later in life years. So we think that since these are primarily young people, they have a very hard time of comprehending what it actually is like to be elderly, what their experiences will be later in life. We told you how dangerous it is to trade off life for surface level traits like more attractive appearances or traits that aid you in materialistic gain, because they told us that it was mainly monetary gain that they were after to start with. They brought you this idea that successful careers could be achieved by trading off life, right? And, you know, being able to go to luxury resorts and going overseas for fun, because these people had traded off decades of their life to become wealthy. We think this is a massively dangerous commodification of human life that actually devalues the meaning of what it is to be human and will cause massive competition among poor people in poverty, competing for a limited number of seats at the higher class tables. We think this is massively dangerous, and we think it is morally justified to intervene when people are literally directly incentivized by market forces and by social pressures from their peers to trade off their lives. Second thing is quality of life. They started with this idea that anyone can become a famous singer, right? But at third, they started changing tack to we're just giving everyone a leg up. You know, people will still have to struggle. They'll still have to move forward. They'll just have a little bit more to chew on, you know, when they're trying to improve this standing and situations. We think, so first of all, we got little response to the realities of the job market, meaning that a successful career will not be bestowed to everyone. But also, when they had this crisis of like raising conditions, we don't think the response was sufficient, because we brought you this concept that either they lose a lot of the benefits on their side of the house because people don't actually go through with this, or their benefits are limited to a small minority of the population, which they were not able to decide from in the end. Then on this third point of clash on inequality, they told us that people will be more well equipped to fight inequality on their side of the house because they become more smart and persuasive. First of all, we think at the point at which Affirmative expects Black people to take years off their life to be more like, to convince more boomers on Facebook arguments, we see the ridiculousness of their case. But also, they ignored all our material on how rich people don't require to lose a single second of their life because they are already allocated these successful jobs, and how inequality is exacerbated by the fact that the rich and people with all these desirable traits accumulate money in all their extra lifespan and all these extra decades they have on top of these people that had to rise up by sacrificing their lives. Moreover, they told us we had no mechanisms for social change. That's just a complete ignoring of our model at first that utilized organic social movements like body positivity movements and movements against inequality, that because they didn't listen to our case, their argument fell apart all the way down the line. Thank you very much.
Oh, sorry, Peter.
We thank the speaker for his speech and would now invite the leader of the affirmative side to close today's debate.
Okay. Today we came out actively proposing a solution to the fact that people are so unhappy with their lives that they fall into massive depression. The negative team gave us no active solutions. We think that even if the things that you trade your years for are not that good, you are making yourself happier. And right from first, we have told you today that that is the most important thing, and that has been our burden to prove today. But we actually think that these changes are better, and I'm going to give a few reasons for this in our points of clash today. The first point of clash was why this is a justifiable decision. So the opposing team pretty much has came out and fundamentally ignored our model that we gave at first in our stance, telling them that we would get multiple medical professionals to talk to these people before they made this decision. They pretty much came out and said everyone's going to do a bunch of really crazy things and it's going to ruin their lives. We actually think that this is mitigated right from the start by our model. So we don't think that these harms are really even that likely to happen. Even if they do, in the short and medium term, they will make you happier. Again, that is what we care about today. So we see that this really is a justifiable decision. The opposing team said that because when you're young, you don't know what it's like to be old, right? But we think that at the end of the day, it's better if you have like 50 years of happiness as opposed to like the years of like agony that we described right at the start. So we think that this is a justifiable decision that does not include like a major trade-off. Okay, what was the second point of clash? Why social inequities are addressed on our side of the house. So the opposing team came out against, once again, fundamentally ignoring our model when we said that we would have people educating these people on their decisions beforehand, and said that like everyone would want to change their ethnicity. We told you at second and at third that we first of all think that this is unlikely because of the community and like the strong ties to their culture that many ethnic groups have. Secondly, we came out and we proved to you at second and at third that people of these communities are likely to want, even if they don't want to make changes, it's likely not going to be like superficial to their appearance, right? It's more likely to be things like getting more skills, getting a leg up to be able to fight for things like Black rights. On the negative team, nothing happens, no inequities are addressed, whereas our side, we give a leg up. The opposing team also said that like this is like not going to be addressing any inequities because the rich already have a seat at the table. We see that this is equally true on their side of the house. This is pretty much even more exclusive to them if possible. We told you at second, at third, and first that we give more disadvantaged people a bigger seat at the table. The rich having a seat at the table is not exclusive to our side of the house. We do not have to stand for that today. And the third point, and the most important point of clash, is why people will live better lives and why people will be healthier. So where a lot of the debate took place is harm to people from social pressures, right? But we told you right at first and second, that we don't see these issues going away under the opposing side of the house. We told you that the counter issues that they propose, like body positivity, have not really made anything to change any like societal pressures already. We see no reason that they're going to start doing that now. These social pressures still exist on their side of the house, whereas on our side of the house, as we've told you, we can alleviate these for some people. This is fixing one problem for one person versus fixing none. It's pretty easy to see that the marginal benefit falls under our side of the house. They also brought up a point about character building. Right, we told you at second that we still think people are going to have to work, right? Just because you gain a skill doesn't mean you're automatically the best in the world. And we also said that like having a sense of achievement is pretty much a marginal benefit compared to like all the benefits we've proposed today. Okay. They also brought up a crisis of rising expectations. We pointed out that again, not everyone is willing to like do this and like accept trading years of their life. So we don't think firstly this will exist. Secondly, we think that if this does exist, people are still going to have incentives to move and be better just from a higher standard to start with. So for these reasons today, it's pretty clear to see that we have won this debate and fulfilled our burden to prove that we make people happier, which is what we cared about today. Thank you.
Great. I'd like to thank you. Oh, sorry, Peter, you go.
No. Okay. I thank the speaker for her speech. Well done, everyone. Good debate. I don't have control over the live stream, so